Hey, in this video, I'm going to be talking to you about how to integrate your darkness. So this is a form of shadow work, but deeper than what we would call traditional shadow work. So I know shadow work's a popular practice in this type of work, and a lot of people kind of really idolize it a bit, I think. But I don't feel like it's the most effective way to create long-lasting deep change. It's helpful, it's a good starting point, but for those people who are looking for a real deep change, you've got to work on the deeper levels. So when we talk about traditional shadow work, we're really talking about gaining kind of psychological insight, right? So you might have certain bad habits or negative programming or addictions. And what shadow work will do is it'll get you to introspect, to understand on a psychological level why you do certain things. Now, for some people, that psychological insight they get is enough to create a shift for them, which changes them, which gives them the outcome they wanted. However, it doesn't always create the shift. And the reason I think it doesn't always create the shift is because it's only really working on that one level, the psychological level. Real change, as far as I'm aware, occurs on 3 levels, not just one. It occurs on the psychological, the emotional, the body, and the energetic or spiritual. Real change happens on them 3 levels for it to be sustainable growth. We need to work with the body, and I think this is something that traditional shadow work doesn't always address. All your problems are manifesting in your body emotionally. So any change you're trying to create on a psychological level requires that emotional shift for that psychological shift to kind of take hold. And further than that, there's also energetic shifts. Your body has got used to your traumas and your negative programming. The way your body functions like a system which has incorporated these traumas and negative programs into it. So when you begin to change and shift these things, you'll have energetic shifts because your body will start to return more to homeostasis. It'll maybe get out of them fight or flight or freeze patterns or whatever it's being stuck in, and that's an energetic shift, along with the emotional and the psychological. So that's why I say that maybe traditional shadow work, just seeking the psychological insight, isn't always going to give you that deep, like body level transformation. You've probably heard it said that the body is the subconscious mind. You need to be working with the body if you really want to change. If you really want to create that shift. All of our actions, the way we show up, our state of being, is predominantly through our body. So if you're having changes here and they're not occurring here, then you're not going to change the way you're being or doing, because all doing and being for the most part is through our bodies. So although I'm not dismissing shadow work, don't shoot the messenger, all I'm saying is it's a good starting point, but you've got to take it a bit deeper and a bit further. And this is what I want to get to here, how to work more directly with your body to integrate that darkness. So when I talk about darkness, I'm not talking about anything like paranormal or scary. I mean, it might be a little bit scary, but nothing weird, right? What I'm really talking about when I say darkness is your own traumas and your own negativity and negative programs and your addictions and all the mental and emotional problems you have. That's all your darkness. It's in the dark because it controls you from behind the scenes. It's in the dark because you don't know how it's got a hold on you. If you could see how it was controlling you, which is really where the term shadow work comes from, you bring it out of the shadow, then it stopped controlling you. And this is what the practice I'm going to share with you will hopefully do for you. Also, different people have different amounts of darkness. I don't know if it's the best way to put it. We can't really quantify it. But someone who's been through a lot, maybe they had a lot of trauma through their childhood, and even as they got older, they had a lot of bad relationships and whatever else, right? That person might have a lot of trauma versus someone who just had a bad breakup when they were growing up. I mean, I'm not comparing. I'm just trying to show you that we hold different levels of trauma. Some people will just have more. Obviously, the people who have got more, it's going to take you longer to work through that darkness versus someone who doesn't have as much. Everyone's suffering is valid, The point I'm trying to make is it may take some people a bit longer, but the silver lining is that for those of you who have more darkness, you potentially have a greater spiritual potential, because all that stuff you're holding, the darkness, requires capacity, requires space. It takes up a lot of like bandwidth in your consciousness, versus someone who doesn't have as much darkness. So their bandwidth doesn't need to be as broad or as wide. Not only have you got darkness to contain, you've also got to live your life. So the point I'm trying to make is, because you're suffering, if you can work through that, you will be able to hold more light. The suffering expanded your bandwidth, the best way I can put it. It expanded your capacity. So that ultimately becomes greater spiritual potential. It's a silver lining on the dark cloud. And I think it's meant to be like this. I really do. So that should keep you strong no matter what you're going through. That, you know what, you potentially have great spiritual potential, but it's got to be earned. You were dealt the hand that you were dealt. It didn't come pre-packaged as a lovely present. No, it came wrapped up in dirt and shit and horrible stuff. If you can work through all that, you're going to find some real gold there, some real value. So that's kind of the silver lining for those of you who have a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff to work through. Your spiritual potential is great. Before I get to the practice for how to integrate your darkness, I just want to say a big part of this will involve your heart. As you begin to work more with yourself and your body, you'll begin to realize that your heart's closed. When your heart's closed, you don't have access to your spiritual potential. Your heart is your spiritual center. It's also a very vulnerable part of us. So if you've had a lot of trauma, a lot of heartache and heartbreak in the past, then that part of you is probably closed. And the big part of this work is opening up your heart. That's where love and pure spiritual energy will come from. So you can actually create a better life. So this can be uncomfortable, but this is what I've learned on my own journey. So let me get to the practice for how you can begin to start integrating your darkness. Like I said, you've got to work with the body. This is a practice I've talked about before, but I'm going to go into a bit more depth now. And you've got to obviously identify triggers. What triggers you? When you get triggered, where do you feel it? Some people are quite numb in the bodies and they can't feel where they're getting triggered. It's just because they haven't brought in enough awareness. I'm hoping you have enough awareness to recognize when you're triggered and where you feel it. When you've identified where you're feeling it, you want to be present with that sensation, the trigger, the discomfort. But you don't want to get too close to it. You want to respect it. You want to make space for it. Don't do what I used to do, which is try to just feel it all in one go. Try to almost bulldoze my way through it. That's not going to go very well for you. You've got to make space for it. You've got to respect it. Literally. Respect it. Hold space, respect. Eventually what will happen is it'll shift and it'll morph. And what I found is that it'll actually go to a different part of your body. Where you feel the initial trigger is usually just the surface level. There's other deeper layers that are outside of your awareness. So let me give you an example, something I was working on. I was feeling something like in my hip area. Hips we hold a lot. I was feeling something in my hip and that shifted and it went to my shoulder, like my right shoulder here. And I'd never felt it in my shoulder before, but because I stayed with it, because I just made space for it and I allowed it to be, it morphed and it went somewhere else. Like I said, it went to my shoulder. And again, I did the same thing there, made space for the discomfort, the sensation in my shoulder. And from there, it went to my chest. And I can't remember how it went after that, but I also remember I got some strong sensations in my left leg, all the way down my leg, right? So these are the levels that we're working on when we're working with our nervous system, we're working with the whole body. You're tracing and tracking these feelings. And this is helping you kind of understand the underlying dynamics of these patterns. Because there's like a network of them. It's not just where you feel it. and you think, okay, this is where I need to focus. No, it's like it's connected everywhere in your nervous system. Like I said, it's one system. And the more consciousness and awareness you can bring to this underlying pattern, which is out of your awareness normally, you don't see it, there's so much we're not aware of, you begin to recognize it, and you'll actually get to the source of the problem. But usually where we initially feel it, that's just the surface layer. There's more to it. And the source is probably somewhere else. It's not where you initially feel it. At least that's been my experience. And something you've got to realize is that it'll just happen on its own. There's no set way for it to go. You can't predict it. You've just got to go with the process. Keep following and tracking the sensations in your body, being with them, making space for them, respecting them, letting them morph into something else, somewhere else, doing that again, just doing that for as long as it takes. Bit by bit, just processing more and more. Bit by bit, your heart will start to open more and more. You'll start to integrate more and more. And I actually think that the psychological benefits just come to the surface. You just start to realize more. The shadow work part I talked about at the beginning, where you do the work to uncover the insight, when you do the work with the body, the psychological insights just bubble up. They just come automatically as a result of the work you've been doing with the emotions, right? So I find this more of a holistic way to work, because you're actually working on the most powerful part with the energies in the body. Okay, so I think that's everything I've got to talk about. I hope this made sense. You've got to practice it. You've got to do the work. Stay persistent, patient with it, and I feel like you'll get great results. I might actually make a meditation on this to help some of you out, something you can follow along with. So look out for that. But that's everything I've got for you today. Hope you enjoyed it. God bless.